It says we're live. My Christmas was alright. I had to. I was pressured into leaving warm Miami to go to cold Cleveland. So yeah,
Yeah, it's not great up here this time of year.
yeah, but it was cool though. How's everything with you?
Good, good. Uh, kind of a long week. Kind of sucks when Christmas is in the midweek because you start the week with work and then had a couple days off. Then I'll end yesterday and today going to work again, and then I'll be back to the weekend, and then New Year's mid next week. But you don't get like a real good extended weekend without taking a day off separate. So whatever.
Yeah,
I just need to come out of retirement so I can retire for real.
that would be nice. I don't know. New Year's is always difficult for me. I don't know. I struggle. New Year's Eve. That's when I start reflecting on life and everything that I feel like I should have accomplished, but I didn't. It's like the worst day of my life is New Year's. So
Yeah, yeah, kind of that forced reflection, and then of course it's 2020 this year, so then you get the added, not to add this on to you, but you get the added 10-year mark since the last turn of the decade. So it's
nah,
kind of a point of reflection for that period too.
it's, I think like with normal people, New Year's is supposed to be like exciting because you look forward you look forward to an even more awesome year, right? That's what normal people,
Yeah,
all 99% of them, um, are happy about. But for me, it's like I don't know. Not to turn this into a therapy session, but I just feel like when you feel like you don't really have control of your life, regardless of everything that you do, it it I don't know. It's kind of depressing. So, all right, I'll man up. I'm done being sad. I saw your I saw your message that I forgot to respond to regarding
no, it's all
Scott
good.
Boshin changing his stance. It appears on railway oriented programming and how he's now advocating, you know what, in a lot of cases where you you don't really intend for something to happen, just throw an exception and stop resisting it, and it makes things a lot easier. That's what I kind of captured reading from his blog. It sounded like he was saying that I'll probably have to review it again, that people were like literally going above and beyond and complicating their code, just not to throw an exception, which is what I do. Like I go above and beyond, and I bloat the hell out of my code just to just to say that this doesn't throw an exception. And it seems like I don't know. Maybe I gotta look into it deeper, but like I throw exceptions usually, at least within the all the code that I have is, or I write a whole bunch of code as an alternative to throw exceptions when I'm just dealing with IO, because I think not establishing a connection is something that can and will happen, and it's not exceptional. So I still kind of disagree with them.
Yeah, I mean, the, you think about it, and most things, unless it's a real assertion, if it's anything that has potential side effects, like not being there, like you said, IO or whatever, that it's yeah, it's just a matter of time before it happens, and you're gonna have to deal with it. And you should at least think about what's gonna happen, because I mean, if you don't, you you really could cause major harm in that one event when it does go down, especially if you're not thinking about downstream impacts. Um, this thing doesn't handle this thing correctly, which produces this result, which is unexpected, and then that causes a chain reaction of things downstream. But yeah, I don't know. It caught me a little off guard. I kind of went it deep in on the result class thing and try not to throw exceptions, unless it's kind of like an internal, maybe implementation detail type thing. Of course, you kind of have to catch exceptions around libraries that don't return result classes. But the one thing that he didn't really talk about is the fact that I don't know. I use result classes as like logging opportunities too, because when you throw an exception, you lose. If you don't do it well, you lose all context around where the exception was thrown, other than where it was thrown. But what was in memory at that spot, you don't really have an opportunity to log that information out and what might have caused that exception to throw. Because it might be that the thing is unavailable, but it might be that you passed in the wrong argument or whatever. But maybe other techniques take those things away. Or maybe you just want to know which one happened to fail, so you can go back in and fix that one thing. But yeah, I guess you could decorate your exception messages or fill your exception messages with that information, as long as you're capturing and rethrowing. But I don't know. Yeah, it caught me a little off guard, but I guess I could see it being easier to not have to think about most of those cases. Like if you don't really care, the only reason I care to even capture them most of the time and not bubble them all the way up to the top and just spit them out is again, like I said, is you get a logging opportunity at each consumer level. And then but then yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I've worked at one job where like the philosophy was let it fail, and they didn't even really do try catch. They just like they purposely didn't do try catch. I'm not even gonna say they. The CTO did not do try catch, and when I brought it up, like, oh, this is doing IO. This isn't safe. This can throw an exception. It's exception prone. He's like, let it fail. I'm like, okay. I'm just gonna act like I'm collecting a paycheck, and I'm not gonna voice my concern. So
Yeah. Well, I guess the other part of it, to be fair, I mean, well, um, with that though, is like I said, from a logging opportunity standpoint, I've done some debugging against apps that have. Did you just like catch the exception at the root level?
unhandled exceptions.
Yeah, they'll just have one handler at the very root that logs it out, and hell if I know what the hell caused that thing to happen, or why, or if there was anything in the app that contributed, especially null reference exceptions. Goodbye. But the app that we're building right now, I mean, with the results, every result pretty much is caught at the next level and logged out. Well, what did I maybe contribute to this error condition that happened? This was the context. This was the ID of the entity I'm processing. This was the arguments that were passed in. And this is the function call that was made. And this is what I was trying to do. And this might be the cause of it or whatever. And it kind of makes you handle those scenarios and handle the logging at those levels. And maybe that's sprinkling a lot of cross-cutting concerns into other logic. But hell, when I've had to debug things within our app, I pop it open and go, yep, it's this. I look at a log strain with a correlation ID for a request, and I go, oh, this is where it died. This is what the context was. This is why it died. It's this other service's fault. Go look at that. Or okay, it happened in here. There was this thing. This was the context. Okay, this is likely what happened. It makes it so much easier to find out what's wrong when it actually things do go wrong. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm not going to change what I've been working towards because he changed his tune. But
Look, it kind of makes me entertain the thought of, okay, for code that's error prone, maybe I should bundle code like that into individual libraries so that they're self-contained, and the clients to that code, they don't have to worry about exceptions. They just need to check the result of it for it being success or failure, and that's it. So the exception is isolated and contained within that particular library that's responsible for doing the IO, and so that I don't have to have that stuff sprinkled all throughout my business logic. This is just a IO dependency library.
sure.
I don't know. That might be overkill too. I mean, I just don't. Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. Well, you lit a firestorm too this last week by well, maybe I'm just never on your tweets long enough to know what happens, but building an event source thing yourself and everyone's got an idea for you.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird because with with Microsoft's Azure platform,
Mm-hmm.
the way that it works, as far as I know it, is that you purchase an annual subscription, and with that, I don't know, it's either like $650 or $1,200. No, I think it's more than that. With the what I think is like $1,200, they pretty much divide that between 12 months, and that's your credits for the month, right? And the reason why I'm saying all this is because originally I'm like, I need to. Currently, I'm spinning up a virtual machine just to write historical events, right, to some event store.
Mm-hmm.
And so that virtual machine is expensive compared to like just doing serverless. Like I had like 3 nodes, which I guess I don't need. And it was like maybe $4 a day. I'm like, why am I doing this? Right? I might as well just write my own, just do serverless, and then write to a database, and that's it. And that's pennies, compared to like $3 or $4 a day.
Mm-hmm.
But as I continue to like rationalize, I'm like, I don't think those credits roll over to the next month. I think you use them or lose them. So, and this is what I think. So, in my particular case, it doesn't really make a difference if that's all the computing that I need. Now, if I require even more computing that generates even more expenses, then yeah, I guess I could refactor my compute expenses, or consolidate them. But right now, I guess it doesn't matter since I'm going to get credits each month, and I can't roll those credits over. So at least
I thought you
I don't
could.
think. Can you? Okay.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe you can't, but um, I'm curious why. So the credits that you're getting, those are from. Are you getting an MSDN subscription? Is that where you get them from, or are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Oh yeah, then they don't roll over. I'm thinking about if you just paid on demand for the Azure stuff. But if you're getting an MSDN license and you're going that route, that's a little different. So,
Well, why wouldn't everybody just pay on demand?
why wouldn't everyone just pay on demand?
Why would why well, let me try to figure out the negation. Why wouldn't everybody just go on the pay on demand tier? Like what would you benefit from just having the license? Is it because you're registered as a business and you're making money, so for legal reasons you have to get a professional or enterprise license, or is there something else?
Well, I don't think that you have to get a. You're talking about an MSDN license, right? Which is more for development purposes.
Yeah, but I was under the impression that if I want to leverage Azure, that I have to get a a, a, a Visual Studio license, like professional or enterprise. That was my understanding.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you
Okay.
can just use it and pay on demand for how much you use it per month. Actually, I don't think you have to have a. I don't think you have to have anything to just get started with Azure. You can do. I think you can do the free web tier and stuff like that for without anything. I mean, and not pay anything. But
No, the website that I went to like 3 weeks or a month ago had all the different Azure tools like serverless and event grid and all that other stuff. And, those features were enabled, if you paid like $1,200 for the year.
hmm, that's weird. Yeah, I always thought everything on Azure was
But
just
yeah, it doesn't make sense if
pay
you're
on
doing
demand.
serverless. So I guess I'll call somebody and figure that out. You find a project yet?
Yeah, so you pay for Azure directly, purchase services from Microsoft directly, pay as you go pricing, combined with Azure Reserve Virtual Machine instances to save more. Pay only for what you use each month with no upfront commitments. Cancel anytime. I wonder if that's.
Can you send me that link?
I mean, that's just the straight up. If you just go to Azure and then their pricing or whatever, it's all pay as you go. Yeah, I can send it to you. Um, but I don't know. Maybe they have. Yeah, I mean the functions, and I mean those are apparently you can do a million function requests for free a month. Um,
Yeah, so like anyway, if I don't have to if I don't have to pay up front for an entire year just to get Azure credits monthly, then I was just going to just the private chat. Okay. Then I was just going to write my own event store, and it would probably take a. I mean, I don't have to do any subscription functionality or features with it. I was going to write my own event store. Shouldn't take more than a day, theoretically, and that's it. All right.
yeah, I'm not sure why event sourcing, like why it has to use a library like that, but I don't know.
Well, Event Store uses a executable that I'm sure does a lot of things, but I don't know. So
Hmm.
I was asking if you discovered a new project to focus on.
Uh, no. I'm still thinking about some stuff, but I don't know. Um, I
Is your
kind of
is your table still in the basement?
it's in the garage, and
Oh,
it will be until the spring when it gets warm enough to put another coat of polyurethane on it. But the yeah, that's not going anywhere. The I kind of want to get into something related with like esports in some way, but or just like tangential to gaming in general. I feel like that's the an area I'd like to get into, but I don't know. I guess I haven't looked at or haven't thought of anything to get into in that arena.
set up an offshore gambling platform.
Yeah. become a kingpin, get nailed by the feds, and
It's offshore.
oh sure, yeah, they'd be on the lookout for anything I would be doing because they're the government.
It's offshore.
Then they'll send the CIA after me for no reason.
Mm, start a animal gladiator zoo and film it and sell the DVDs or live stream it. You have a hippo against a wildebeest. I don't know. Trying to motivate you.
Yeah, I don't think animal cage fighting is right with my ethos, and or it would be a good thing to get into. So I don't know. Usually the one thing, like you said, about the end of the year comes around, and I usually get a fire lit under me for something. So it's still a week away, but uh, I hope that'll happen. Um, yeah, maybe I should just make it happen. I don't know. What I need to do is just do anything really small, and get in the habit of doing stuff again. That's probably more important than actually getting something that I'm quote unquote passionate about.
Okay.
But
Or you can help me do this mobile dry cleaning, whatever. That's still on my radar. Whenever. In
yeah, I
re-
think the dry cleaning thing's a pretty good idea if you could pull it off.
no, if you could pull it off.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't have big city problems like that, man.
Mm,
I just found out we have some Lyft drivers here in town every once in a while, so I'm pretty excited about that now. Next time that I have a chance to go out on a Friday or Saturday night with people.
there you go. So in regards to me, I claimed that I was going to have this Azure this Azure backend wired up to my client applications, and I didn't complete it. Um, I did a lot of refactoring.
Well, why the fuck not? Damn it.
Um, s- Out of all the iterations that I've done um, on the back end, I find decisions that I've made earlier on uh, just could improve. So, like, for example, I had these courier services, right? Meaning that as a courier, you are going to submit your various status updates to, hold on one second. As a courier, you're going to commit or submit some of your status updates or most of your status updates to this courier service, and it's going to log like you received the delivery request, you accepted the delivery request, you declined the delivery request, you are en route to the restaurant, you found these specific items at the restaurant or at the grocery store. So you have all these historical events for the saga of a courier fulfilling whatever delivery request. Well, I'm answering your question. It's just taking me a while. Um, I also have this notion of an event log service. Event log service just is responsible for logging all the events, period. Right? So when someone applies to be a courier, the event log registers that event or stores that event. When applicant is accepted and becomes a courier, that gets logged. So what ended up happening is I found that I the all the services that I had for my courier domain, it didn't make sense anymore since my event log is going to handle all of that, right? Because that's like the source of truth for everything. And the majority of the operations are write operations. There's really, for the courier service, there's really no requests. It's write, 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 write. The courier is posting um, information about the saga of fulfilling that request, and that's it. So I ended up shoving a whole bunch of things over to the event log since it needs to have it anyway, and then finding that I had all this duplicated functionality in my courier service, and carefully commenting all that out and then phasing it out and then deleting it after testing. And so that took a while based on me having my 2 hour quotas each day.
Sure.
And then just between last week and this week, revisiting some of my decisions on the actual mobile client about leveraging Azure Service Bus on the actual mobile client, and just solidifying those architectural decisions. Now I'm at the point where I'm starting to test uh, Azure storage for tables, and what that means is for the courier tracking, um, getting their last location, uh, saving if they're subscribed or if they're unsubscribed, and I think that's the gist of that. That part is a mutable database, and so I'm using Azure storage tables for that, and that's where I'm at. And hopefully, I'll have all this wired up by next Friday.
Cool.
I'm still waiting to like just stamp, 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 stamp all over my resume, all this Azure stuff that I've been doing. I've been holding off because I feel like I don't have the right to update my resume with it yet.
I think
Until,
you do.
until I have something working. It's not fair for me to do a tutorial and then put on my resume Azure. Like I want to be the real deal. So
Well, you could put some of it, right? Azure Functions, you got that down? You're probably one of the foremost authorities at making Azure Functions work with F Sharp now.
they're not implemented in F Sharp.
They're not. Oh, they're not? Oh, you're doing it in C Sharp?
No, the Azure functions are essentially C Sharp clients to my F Sharp implemented domains,
Hmm.
or my domains written in F Sharp. Just because there's no first class, their F Sharp templates are not first class citizens in regards to Service Bus or Azure functions. And although, like, I could do all that manually for the sake of time and return on investment, I choose not to.
Oh, so you just wrote a thin
Yeah.
orchestration layer or whatever, wrapper,
Yeah.
middleware within C Sharp and called it a day.
Yeah. In which, I mean, I kind of posted it like 15 minutes before you and I connected on here, where for these Azure functions, I have these like log statements,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like on average 3 different log statements per Azure function. One for successfully processing an operation, one for catching an exception, and one for not being able to process a uh, a post, but there was no exception thrown, just something else happened, right? And so now I'm having like this obfuscation because of like these log statements, and then F sharp, I think I would use like computation expressions, um, which I don't have much experience with, to kind of like obfuscate that stuff. In C sharp,
Mm-hmm.
I think you would use like aspect oriented programming to alleviate a lot of that stuff to provide better clarity. But I think that's kind of overkill. So I'm not sure if I should just accept my code just being messy, handling both the responsibility of logging and what the original intent of those operations are. I don't know. I don't like the way it looks, but I guess I should just get over it and keep it moving.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at it now. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't know. I think I've looked at the aspect oriented programming stuff, and I think this goes back to the whole talk about the result class and logging earlier. Um, it makes it longer to have logging in there, but I feel like it's important because you have an opportunity at every point in the log to I feel like you have an opportunity at every point in the log to catch context or give more information or add conjectures as to why it might have failed or um, in
It's
addition to what you get out of an exception
it,
thrown.
it's important. As far as I know, aspect-oriented programming is like the only framework that I'm aware of that handles these cross-cutting concerns, right? And
Well, you can. I mean, aspect-oriented programming isn't much other than just a way to describe proxies, right? So, I mean, you could put proxies through all of this stuff, or like do like I did do with like mediator or whatever is just inject a couple layers of proxies between the final target stuff and what you're going because that's all this stuff is. You figure you have a function that doesn't have any exception handling or any logging in it. You put a wrapper around it that catches an exception and maybe converts it into something else. Or if you put a proxy behind it that does the logging of the incoming and the logging of the outgoing, you can stack a proxy without really much any problem. The problem is manually writing them, which
yeah,
is what aspect oriented programming does. Is it'll stitch in those things for you. But if you build a with dependency injection, if you went that route, you could put in your DI framework is wire up all the proxies through that. Um, and I don't know, C# still might have a way to do auto implementation of interfaces and stuff like that, where you could actually put proxies in that don't have to necessarily uh, you don't have to implement by hand. You could use reflection to do, but I don't know. There's probably some opportunities to just use proxies to take those concerns out if you really want to move them out.
yeah. I guess right now it's not that huge of a priority, but looking at it kind of bothers me.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now because you've got your serialized. I'm still surprised that you have to. Well, I suppose this is an Azure function. This isn't an MVC controller type thing, right? So you're doing your HTTP request, you're deserializing
I
that
followed,
stuff.
I followed the tutorial. Um, it's perfectly possible that things could be optimized, but I took the tutorial and I just ran with it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, otherwise it looks fine to me. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't necessarily return a bad. Well, actually, I guess if you because you're in your storage. Oh, that's just connection string. Okay.
Holy crap, I got a whole bunch of feedback on Twitter from it.
The three calls. I'm assuming we're looking at the same thing.
I'm looking at my Twitter and like, so I got like 8 different replies or whatever. Um, I'll review it later. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean that's the what Leaf was saying there was is basically what I'm saying is that I mean, if you have a proxy, that's just a function composed in, and so you could just wrap a function with a logging function, and you call it a day. I'm thinking a much more object oriented mode, but yeah, that's essentially you just compose the logging function around the rest of your stuff.
Okay. Oh, in addition to that, things are going to be challenging because there's a likelihood that I'll be spending a lot of time here in Canada, and so
Going to
that's
be
that's going to create a challenge for me to market this speech delivery business once I have code complete. Well, I won't even say code. Once I have enough code to demo the functionality, um, there's a high likelihood that I'll have a crib up here, and I won't be able to pound the pavement, pound the beach for marketing and recruiting.
well,
So
you just got to find something Canadians are really into. Can you make it a mobile hockey delivery service for hockey pucks?
nah, I think I could
Oh,
make it to anything that deals
maple
with.
syrup. Just kidding.
I think I could make it to anything that deals with mobile delivery. I
Yeah,
think
the dry cleaning thing still a pretty good idea.
I'm thinking about naming it geo delivery. Maybe I should look that name up to see if it's already taken. If I name it geo delivery, then I could over time add on more and more delivery services into one app versus having individual apps that pretty much the only difference is skin and a little piece of functionality about the particular domain.
Hmm.
What do you think about that name?
Geo delivery. Um, to be honest, it's a little wordy, but delivery's got a lot of delivery syllables in it. Um, versus trying to think of if there's any Uber Eats three, Task Rabbit three. I don't.
All right. Well,
Simple
I
name. Short.
already know right now we could spend like 20 minutes
I know.
on that.
Naming's hard. I just keep thinking of Geodude and Pokemon or something like that. Geodes.
So outside of that, the the disconnected mode of running these applications still work. The Azure backend is in progress, and right now I got to learn how to use the Azure Storage Emulator for that to serve as a backend service slash storage mechanism so that I can write to that, and all that stuff is configured on some like local JSON file that is analogous to app config or web config. Once I have that node down, then I am going to impersonate requests and fulfillments, and I'm sure that's going to flush out some additional cosmetic issues and logistic issues and weed out that stuff, resolve it, refine it, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Then I have to figure out how to go guerrilla when it comes to making that service visible to patrons on the beach or would be patrons on the beach. I'm almost there, Sean. Regardless of if it makes any money, I I think I really do graduate to at least the pay rate to do like 115, 120 an hour as a consultant. from building a fairly complex distributed system that works, and the source code's there, right? So if I wanted to after this, I could spend the next easy 8 weeks writing blog posts and submitting talks to conferences. Easy.
Yeah, yeah. The conference talk thing would get a lot of traction, I think. Um,
Which I was thinking about submitting a talk to Capital F Sharp. I saw that yesterday in in Washington D.C. I just want to give a talk the on on building an entire like business in F Sharp and lessons learned and all that. I think that's more valuable and higher and is more likely for people to pay for my flight and my lodging to discuss my experience than describing how I learned F Sharp, right? But then again, the majority of people that go to F Sharp uh, conferences people that want to learn it, or people that want to refine, have a better return on investment on their business infrastructure that sits on top of it. I know I just butchered that. Like, what do you think? It's people that want to learn or people that are already doing it
um,
that go to these conferences?
it's usually a mix, right? People go to conferences to, I guess, in my understanding and things, people go to conferences to be exposed to new ideas and new things that they might not have thought about, because it's too short of a time frame to really come away with any actionable knowledge, um, in terms of or like I come in a novice and I leave the expert. No, it's I come in and I didn't know what I didn't know, and now I know what I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
mine's kind of different. Like when I went to NDC London, I went specifically to meet like Mark Seaman, Scott Blashin, right?
mhm.
The masters, so that I could like, without them knowing, be the apprentice from like 2, 3,000, 4,000 miles away, whatever the distance is. But here's the strategy now, right? The strategy now is like I feel like I'm intermediate at F sharp. I'm sure that there's a lot of really smart people that say no, I'm still a beginner, but I think I'm intermediate. All right. Here's a strategy: is go to conferences to develop relationships. Give talk at conferences to develop relationships. Let these relationships, um, hopefully, at least a percentage of them, um, pr- provide an opportunity to make money. Right. So if I can stage myself, for lack of a better term, as a somewhat authority on building a one man startup using this specific suite of technologies, Azure, F sharp, domain driven design, or whatever. And I started talking on a public platform on that. I should be able to graduate to my goal of billing at like 120, 125 an hour easily. I know people are getting it for whatever reason. The universe doesn't want to give me it, right? So that's the strategy: is build relationships with decision makers and gatekeepers, and take what they're struggling with based on the technologies that they declare they're going to use for their roadmap, and help them with it based on me learning all this on my own, so that they don't have to pay for people to make mistakes on their dime. So that's my strategy. Thanks for being my therapist.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of conference uh, stuff for, if especially if you're a speaker, is about relationship building and hallway conversations and stuff like that. Um, as an attendee, some of that for sure. But yeah, just coming. I think I said most of it is just coming away with new ideas or new approaches to things to try to maybe bring into your toolbox, um, or new outlooks on things. I think when I went to my first conference, it was the real focus on UX and user experience and UI elements and stuff like that was something that I came away with. Um, didn't really know how to implement half of it in terms of you know doing well at it, but I came away with an appreciation for it. So um, yeah, I don't know. I think that you could probably make a pretty decent talk on kind of your struggles with employing F sharp on Azure. That would probably be a good thing. Um, yeah, you come away with a lot of material in this process. Now if you could make $1 million off of it and then say how I made $1 million off of this thing,
Oh,
I don't. Then it would be another totally different story.
like what I'm curious about is a lot of these thought leaders for specific languages. I'm curious if they actually have built platforms that are making them money. And I mean, like, are they building like actual businesses for consumers? Or are they just in the education arena? And the only platform that they do build may be a website that sells their curriculum, right? Their lectures. Um,
I'd assume I'd
like,
assume very much the latter.
yeah, like have they built anything by themselves that is out there that non-programmers are giving them money for? I wonder how many of them are doing that. I feel like I don't know their business, but I feel like the answer is probably no because they tend to only focus on developers as being in regards to Patreon and YouTube. I think their market is developers when they're like these master programmers of these like next generation languages. I, I'm trying really hard to be the other. Like I want to be a
Well, I mean,
master, but I want to make my money off of consumers. Like
yeah. Well, you have to wonder too how many of them are only just masters over certain aspects of a language or whatnot, or just really are good at relaying themselves as such. I think there's people like if you take like a Jimmy Bogard, for instance, I think like he's actively building systems for clients and he builds tools and is refining his approach. You can see it. He talks about it in his talks. He'll talk about it in terms of clients that he's had and struggles they were facing and how they solved it and what they did differently than you know what you do as a standard .NET developer type deal. And you can see some of the stuff on GitHub, many iterations as they continue to refine their approach and at stuff and get better at it. Um, I mean that's definitely directly a result of improving and delivering software, at least in the way that I can see it. Um, but yeah, a lot of conference speakers, especially the ones that are doing it over and over again. Like I've conjectured, like how do you just get paid to go and speak all the time, or you're just on the conference circuit,
yeah,
um, and mostly what you're doing is just teaching basics. That's what you're, and you're part of the club.
yeah, that's a conversation I had with Scott Blashin. Like he didn't like the way I framed the question, and it's up there on YouTube. I'm like, like you're so smart. Don't you ever like realize the opportunity cost of, instead of you focusing on the next generation of advanced applications of what you already know, you're dumbing it down for people like me, and that's how you're spending your time. So instead of spending your time like going to the top and doing awesome things with the foundation that you already have, you're like using your time on this planet to demystify, aka dumb down this information for people like me, when I feel like you're so gifted that like the sky's the limit for you. And he said, well, I don't enjoy that. I enjoy helping people.
Hmm.
And he said flat out, it's like, I really don't like when you say that, dumbing down. I'm not dumbing it down. Like, so that was our conversation a couple years ago.
Sure. Sure.
Well, we got 5 more minutes potentially, unless you're ready to hop off now.
Yeah, I could stay, I could go.
Is there anything else on the horizon? I said conference. I said, hey, give me a code review for free and post this on Twitter. That's what I really do. To get free code reviews, I just put it on Twitter and let people roast me.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot that the only thing in the tech world that caught me off this last week was there was a Uncle Bob said something about pairing. Um, if you don't like pairing, don't pair, but be prepared for folks who have developed pairing skills to fly past you. And I don't know.
I think people just like to disagree with them.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's if it wasn't controversial, I don't know why you would post it.
I have something. Uh, so what? If I get fired, I get fired. All right. So yesterday, I
Don't get fired, man.
yesterday I had a silent meltdown,
Hmm.
and so like I was getting frustrated in the code that I was in. Not This isn't my project. This is like a part-time gig that I'm doing, freelance, whatever.
Hmm.
And I'm looking like at like this 100 line method, and like I'm seeing these variables being reassigned values like 10 different times throughout this 100 line method, and like I just see all this state being reassigned everywhere, and like the coding conventions aren't being followed, and so something that's a local variable doesn't look like a local variable because everything is in uppercase. And like this is me coming off Christmas, and I'm trying to like digest all this information so that I can like do what I was asked to do. And to make a long story short, I was like, you know what, this isn't worth my time. I'm about to just work my own project. And so I just sent a message saying I'm taking the rest of the day off. Right. And this was like a hour and a half, 2 hours into the day. And I'm not going to bill them at all for that day. But
Hmm.
like, I was like, to make a long story short, I got so fed up with the code base that I just decided I wasn't going to deal with it for that day. And that my time was better spent doing something that I wanted to do, right? Working with code that I want to work with. Has that ever like either happened to you, or have you ever like had a borderline meltdown based on the code?
I don't know if I've had. Well, yeah, no. I mean, I've had days where I've, uh, where specifically I've wanted things to be better, and let's say, um, when it happens to me, it's I spend a long time working on something, trying to make it solid, from like a especially from like a usability standpoint or a user experience standpoint, in terms of, you know all the most of the edge cases were covered. Anything that wasn't was documented and to close up, and things were clean interactions, and then something happened where somebody kind of just goes in and changes it all and doesn't cover those same cases, and I just get really upset about it. Not to their face, or just it's more of an internal frustration than I don't want to take it out on people. Maybe you vent to a coworker who's actually worth understanding and everything like that, and on the same page with you. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't think I've had meltdowns about specific chunks of code being this way or that way. At least not recently, but I have had it for when an application degrades in a way that especially if I spend a lot of time working on something, making it so that it would work, and not be degraded. What's the worst is that it starts off in one situation, I make it way better, I fix it, it's perfect, and then it got flipped back to the previous situation. For whatever reason. I did have one situation where I can remember where we were building this it was essentially a quantity changer, and it's just a front end component or whatever. But there was a lot of complexities I went around fixing, resolving focus, and if you lose focus or if you click away, it would cause a different behavior. And so there was a lot of what ended up being kind of complex looking logic in there to handle this situation, but everything was necessary. It was all necessary because the UI interactions that you could do with this thing would put you into bad states if you didn't. And the only thing that in the code review or whatever, so somebody essentially came in and wiped all that out and replaced it with the much simpler code implementation, but didn't handle all of the cases, UI cases that needed to make the thing actually solid, so that the user didn't end up in really messed up states and we didn't get bugs. And the feedback in the PR was, oh, this made it so much simpler. But the reason why all that complexity was there was because it's not a trivial thing.
Yeah, they didn't account for the durability of that operation.
Yeah, no, yeah. So it was, they were, the praise was given for basically making the thing less usable, less
they made
resilient.
It aesthetic, but when it's out there in production, it's going to fail with that 1% that could be an issue if there's a lot of people pounding it. Right?
Yeah, and the thing is all the complexities. I even commented as to why does this complexity exist? Okay, if you're on this control and you use the mouse and you click away, this is what happens in this scenario. You'll end up with this state, and then that produces a state that's not desirable for the UX, and this is why this is here. And it was just blown away and said, oh, this is simpler. It wasn't like the code was hard to read either. It's just that there was enough complexity around the topic that you had to spend time. It wasn't just obvious.
Are there not work item IDs that are attached to the files that are attached to change sets?
Yeah. Every commit has a ID attached to it.
I guess who actually is going to look at the history of the file that they quote unquote refactor, so that they have context information about why that file has been touched so many times in regards to all the different bugs that were logged against it or that it's associated to.
Yeah. Here's another scenario. So we have this this thing to pick objects, and you can also delete those objects in that picker. And so if you select an object and then you delete, or if you delete all the objects in that picker, then you're left with a state where nothing is selected. But there's a button to actually use the selected object, And I spent time making sure that, okay, when there's nothing selected or you've deleted everything, that button is disabled or doesn't do anything or handles the scenario. And then somebody came in and that was broken for a long time, and I made sure everything worked. If you edit something and you come back, it would function. Somebody came through and just reintroduced that bug again. Like, didn't handle the simple case of what happens when you delete everything. And it's like, I just hate when I make progress on something and that progress gets removed for whatever reason, and not replaced with more robust logic, actually degraded in any way. That's the most frustrating thing, to answer your original question.
And you guys have the whole pull request system, right?
Yeah,
Versus
but it
trunk
becomes
based.
it's long been just a rubber stamping system.
Yeah, like my argument, and I'm wrong a lot, is if it were trunk based development, then people would notice that a lot sooner.
Yeah,
They would, because you're continuously integrating with all the other developers, and they're going to have to take that path sooner or later, and they're going to see it, right?
yeah. I don't know. I've actually thought about suggesting what if we just try for a sprint, just immediately allowing integration whenever the person wants to, even if there's kind of like an organizational mandate to have some reviews. Um, I mean, it could be one of these things where it's like you get one developer instead of two, and mostly it's just a once over quick. Is there anything obviously wrong with this? Because it's really one of these things where nobody's doing the in-depth, not even me, doing the in-depth review of code in terms of, does this actually solve the problem that they're looking to solve. It's more like, man, it looks okay. But then it takes time to get those reviews because you're on someone else's schedule. It'd almost be better just to throw it in and see what shakes out.
No.
So, anyways, I got to go.
All right, Sean, it's been real. Thanks.
All right, have a good one. Bye.